working with a mic. The ACC stands for Associate Certified Coach. That's a designation from the International Coach Federation, which is kind of the umbrella organization for the coaching industry. It's about 70,000 members worldwide, 25, 30 countries. The CPC stands for Certified Professional Coach. That's the designation I received when I graduated from the Institute of Professional Coaching, which is an accredited organization that trains coaches. And the GCSC is, I'm a Gallup Certified Strengths Coach, which, if you're not familiar with the Gallup organization, you probably know them from polling. You hear, the latest Gallup poll shows the Republicans are down, and so forth. Anyway, Gallup also has a coaching operation, and their assessment's called the Clifton Strengths Assessment, and I'm certified to basically administer that and coach in that respect. When John, I was in New York when John sent me his email asking me what the title of my presentation was. Well, I didn't have my notes with me. I didn't have any of my slides, so I really didn't know how to respond because I hadn't really thought about it. I was still developing it. And when I got back, I thought, well, let me give him an answer. So I thought, well, let me just throw that out there, how to successfully navigate a job change. Now that I read it, it seems a bit presumptuous. It makes it sound like I've got all the secrets, that I know what it takes. Despite the gray beard, that's not the case. I don't have the secret recipe. A more appropriate title should have been Ideas on How to Successfully Navigate a Job Change. And that I can do, because that's exactly what I'm offering. I'm offering thoughts and ideas based on many years of experience, both as a job seeker and as a hiring manager. So hopefully, some of the things that I'll tell you tonight will resonate with you and give you some insight and hopefully inspire you. Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek is an author. I don't know if you've ever seen him on TED Talks. He's been on some podcasts. Very bright individual, very well spoken. He's written a number of books. The one that stuck with me was Start With Why. The title basically was geared more towards the corporate environment, leaders in corporate world, but it resonates as well with individuals. And let me read you how he opened the book. When I first discovered this thing called why, it came at a time in my life when I needed it. It wasn't an academic or intellectual pursuit. I had fallen out of love with my work and found myself in a very dark place. There was nothing wrong with the quality of my work or my job, per se. It was the enjoyment for that work that I had lost. By all superficial measurements, I should have been happy. I made a good living. I worked with great clients. The problem was I didn't feel it. I was no longer fulfilled by my work, and I needed to find a way to rekindle my passion. The discovery of why completely changed my view of the world, and discovering my own why restored my passion to a degree multiple times greater than at any other time in my life. It's quite a profound statement. I don't know about you, but maybe some of you have felt this. I know I have. You're in a job, and you just don't feel right. You don't feel like you want to be there anymore. We don't know why. Can't explain it sometimes. But it's very important to understand why. Because when you make decisions that are impactful on your life and your families in many cases, it's really important to understand why you're making that decision. What led you to make that decision? And more importantly, why you will choose the next step. Many people are considering leaving their jobs. Some of you may be considering leaving your jobs rather. Some of you may have already left your jobs. These are some of the reasons that I thought of. It's not an exhaustive list. There could be many things you can add. I'm not earning what I'm valued at. I'm underpaid for the value I bring to the organization. I hate my job. It's boring. I mean, I get cross-eyed trying to stay awake doing my job. I don't like my boss. She's rude and she's mean. I don't get along with my coworkers. They're really backstabbing gossipers. I wouldn't buy that company's products, and if people knew it as well, they wouldn't buy it either. I want more free time. You know, I work so many hours that I have to reintroduce myself to my kids every Saturday morning. I don't like the culture. It's kill or be killed in that environment. Any number of reasons. Pick your own. The point is, you need to understand why you're feeling that way. And you need to understand why you want to make the change. You have to ask yourself, is this something that has been brewing for some time? Or is this something that suddenly came to me? What was the tipping point? What drove me to think that way? What drove me to make the decision that I want to leave? Understanding that is very important, because understanding that will keep you from making the wrong decision when you do leave. Because if you think about it, if you don't like your boss, does it mean you have to stay in that department? Is it possible to transfer to another unit? If you don't like your coworkers, again, you can transfer out. If you don't like your job, is there a possibility there's another opportunity within the organization? The point is, you want to exhaust all the possibilities before you make that very, very important decision, because it could have ramifications. You may wind up in a similar environment, or sometimes even in a worse environment. So, what about the people who have lost their jobs? In that particular case, the decision was made for them. But here again, you have to ask yourself, why? Why did I lose my job? Why was I let go? Did I not get along with the boss? Was the company being restructured? Was the company acquired? Was my job eliminated? Was I supplanted by a robot? Did I not have the requisite skills to do the job effectively? Any number of reasons. You have to ask yourself those questions. Now, you notice at the top I put performance, and I didn't mention performance. Human nature is very simple. We tend to lie to ourselves. We lose our job. We feel like we're the victim here. What did I do? I didn't deserve this. I was doing my job. You know, I showed up to work every day. I hardly ever missed work. I was never late. I didn't take all my vacation days. Everybody familiar with the Chicago Bulls basketball team? Chicago Bulls were a mediocre team for many years in the NBA, until they drafted this one guy named Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was a superstar in college, and they were hoping that he would replicate his performance in their franchise. Well, guess what? 5, 6, 7 years. They struggled with Michael Jordan. He was having a good season. He was performing, but the team still performed poorly. They didn't make the playoffs for the first few years of his career. Did they get rid of him? No. They kept him. And they decided that they would try to find a way to build around him. It took them a few years, but ultimately, they put together a team that complemented him, and he elevated their game to the point where they won 6 championships. A star performer doesn't get fired. A star performer doesn't lose his or her job. If you are a star performer, or even a better than average performer, chances are you wouldn't be let go. So and that's not to say that it can't happen even to a star performer, because it depends on the circumstances. If a company's being shut down, everybody loses their job. But if a company's going through restructuring, there are people they want to keep. And usually the star performers are the ones they want to keep. So if you've lost your job, you have to ask yourself, was I performing at my peak? Was I giving them 100%? And if you can answer that honestly to yourself and say, yeah, maybe I could have done a little bit more. I used to tell people, you show up for work and you do your job, you get a salary. You do a good job, you get an annual raise. You do an outstanding job, you'll get a bonus, and maybe even a promotion. Okay? So showing up for work is fine, but it does not make you a standout. It just makes you a reliable person among many reliable people. So the point is, ask yourself those questions and be honest with yourself. Now, once you've left your company, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, you now have an opportunity. Opportunity for a fresh start. If you go to another company, clean slate. Or you may decide, this is the chance that I've always wanted. I wanted to pursue my passion. Or maybe I want to change careers. I want to go do something else. And finally, because we're all closet entrepreneurs at some point, we want to start our own business. Okay? Each one of those has very, very significant ramifications. But before we get to that, I want to go back to the question of why. I agree. Understanding the why is very important. But there's another question that we all have to ask ourselves before we can answer that why. And I use this in my coaching practice, and I ask all my clients the same question. I may not ask it in the first session, maybe not even the second session, but I will get to it eventually, because it's very important. And that's the question you have to ask yourself. What is most important to me? Sounds like a simple question, but believe me, it's not easy to answer, because it requires a good deal of thought and a good deal of soul searching. Because when we're thinking about making a career change or a job change, we need to understand what it is we're looking for, what it is that makes me want to show up for work, makes me look forward to getting up in the morning, staying late if I have to, or even if I don't have to, I just want to because I really enjoy it. When you've answered that question, you'll give yourself the opportunity to make the right choice on your next move. So let's go to each one. A fresh start. These are the questions you need to ask yourself. Any one of these can be important, and there may be some that aren't on there. Okay. Will I have real growth opportunities? For some people, that's important. I'm looking for advancement. I want to really grow in my job. I want to learn, and I want to be a contributor, and I want to eventually rise in the organization. Other people pay more attention to the environment. What's it like? How are the people there? How's the management? How do they treat their employees? What is their reputation in the marketplace? Are they well respected? Would I have pride working there? Would I be proud to tell everybody that's where I work? And do I see myself being there for the long haul? Questions you have to ask yourself when you're considering a change. Because, like I said, leaving for the wrong reasons may wind up landing you in the wrong place. Leaving for the right reasons will help you navigate, hopefully, to find the right place. One tip I tell everybody, when you're negotiating, get everything in writing. Pursue my passion. We all have hobbies. We all have things that we really enjoy. And we say to ourselves, oh boy, if I ever had the opportunity, I could play the guitar really well. Man, I could see myself playing in front of an audience. Well, guess what? There are a lot of people out there that play guitar real well. I see them on the street all the time. The question you have to ask yourself is, can I make it a career? Whether it's music, whether it's art, you say to yourself, well, I'm a good artist. Well, if Hunter Biden can do it, why can't I? And you have to really be honest with yourself and say, do I really have the talent? Am I that good that people would be willing to pay me what I believe I'm worth for my gifts? And here's another important one that people don't even think about sometimes. It's your hobby. It's your outlet. When you're working and you want to blow some steam, if you're a musician, you play music. If you're an artist, you paint. If you're a sculptor, you sculpt. It's your outlet. What happens when it becomes your job? Are you still going to be passionate about it? And what's your outlet going to be? So think about those things. Very important questions to ask yourself. Go into a new field. Very basic questions. What skills am I going to need? Am I going to need a degree? Am I going to need some kind of certification? Am I going to have to go through an extensive training program? How much time will that involve? I'm looking at you. Many of you have been in the workforce for many years. Are you prepared to carve out a significant ton of your time, probably unpaid in some cases, to make the change? Can you stand it financially? What impact will that have on your household budget, on your family? If you have a working spouse, how much of a burden will you put on your spouse? All very important questions. And that last one is really important. Will my heart be in it? You know, I saw a commercial, I think it was an Amazon commercial, where this young fellow was talking about having lost his brother and his mother. And he was working, and he decided he wanted to go into the nursing field. And so he decided he quit his job, became a trained nurse, and he became a nurse. Now, he had the passion for it. But not everybody does. Who wants to be insulted? Who wants to be treated like slave labor by doctors? Who wants to be mistreated by patients? Who wants to work long hours for low pay? Only people that have the passion for it. Not everyone does. And that's true in any field you choose. You have to have the passion for that when you make that decision, because you're making a commitment. And it's a life-changing commitment. So, again, things to consider when you're considering a new field. Here's my favorite, starting a business. Everybody dreams of starting their own business. Probably one of the most difficult things you can do, particularly in this day and age. You have to decide what kind of business you want. Now, when I left the banking business, I was a banker for 40 years, and I decided I'd had enough. I left the banking industry. But I had no clue what I wanted to do. Now, fortunately for me, I was in a position where I could afford to think about it for a while and not have to worry about the mortgage. Not everybody's in that situation. But you have to decide what type of business it is you want to get into. I looked at a lot of businesses. I looked at franchises, and I did a lot of research. You know, I looked into them very closely. And my daughter, I was looking at one very seriously. And I remember my daughter, my oldest daughter, you know, she's a PhD, very bright, you know, very opinionated. So I was sharing my thoughts with her. She said, "My God, Dad, what are you thinking? You nuts?" I said, "Why? It sounds like a good business. It's recession-proof. It's got all these characteristics which you want in a business." She says, "Yeah, but what do you know about the business? And is your heart in it?" It made me think, is my heart in it? I was looking at it very dispassionately as a business. But when you get into a business, it's your own business. Your heart's got to be in it. If it's not, you're not going to succeed. And the reason is long hours, no pay, struggling, trying to make ends meet, trying to get the business off the ground, requires an enormous amount of dedication and intent and commitment. And if you don't have it here, you're not going to make it. 35% of businesses fail within the first year. Something to think about. Questions to ask. How much money, how much capital will I need? Where am I going to get the money from? What kind of legal issues am I going to encounter? Most importantly, will I be able to support my family while I'm getting the business off the ground? All very important questions. Now, regardless of which path you decide to take, I always say, do your research, whether it's looking for a new job, looking to start a business, looking to change careers, no matter what you do, research. Information is power. The more you know, the better equipped you are. So I can't stress that enough. Do research. I saved myself a lot of headaches and a lot of heartache by doing that when I was looking at different businesses. Ask questions. And that also applies when you're interviewing. You know, we go in an interview and we expect to answer all the questions that are asked of us. But you have as much of a right to ask questions of the interviewer. And, you know, the questions that are important, again, what's most important to you? Those are the kind of questions you want to zero in on. If it's culture, you want to understand the culture. If it's, you know, bonus plans and so forth, you want to understand that too. Health plans, whatever. Whatever's most important to you, those are the types of questions you need to ask. Again, information is power. Talk to people. Talk to people within the company if you know anybody. Talk to people outside the company who may be familiar with them. The more you know, the better equipped you're going to be. And seek help when needed. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You know, I think we were talking about that once before, how uncomfortable some people feel. I haven't talked to this person in 2 years. All of a sudden, I'm going to call them up and say, hey, you know, I haven't talked to you in 2 years, but, you know, I was wondering if you could help me out with something. Well, I mean, you got to work on your approach, but there's nothing wrong with that. Even if you haven't spoken to them in 2 years, you'd be surprised. Most people are flattered when you ask for their help. So don't expect a negative reaction. Expect a positive one. And again, it depends on what you're asking for. Okay? I mean, again, you have to think that one through too. And very importantly, set your expectations. If you're changing jobs, I'm not coming there to, I'm not going to be the CEO in 6 months. You know, it may take a couple of years. But the point is, know what your expectations are. You know, go in there fully understanding where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing, and then set to yourself for that and say, okay, you know, I knew going in, that's what I expected to be, and that's what I expected to do. That way, there are no surprises. You know exactly where you are, exactly where you're going. And network. Very important. I'm going to spend a minute on that. Networking. I always believe that it's important to have an elevator speech. It's what we call a 2-minute pitch or an elevator speech. Everybody familiar with the term? Okay. I believe that an elevator speech needs to be brief, needs to be concise, and it needs to be effective. I believe it has to have the 3 I's, what I call the 3 I's. You need to introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Joe Cruz. Pleasure to meet you. Quick. Don't go into your resume. Just introduce. Inform. Again, don't go into the resume. What I mean by inform? Well, in some of these career ministries, I listen to people and they say, well, what do you? Well, I'm in IT. Okay. I'm in healthcare. Okay. What's that tell me? Tell me anything. What you say is, hey, I design state-of-the-art software that revolutionizes a company's operations. That's a different story. You're in IT. Here, now you're zeroing in on what you are. But more importantly, what you bring, what your capabilities. You're giving them a hint of what it is that you can provide. And that is designed to inspire curiosity. And what do I mean by that? You want them to ask you a question. Tell me more. Now, once they've given you that question, they've given you permission to open up and tell them more. Use that time wisely. But in those 2 minutes, or however long you want to develop your elevator speech, that's what you want to do. You want to introduce, you want to inform, and you want to inspire curiosity. You want them to start asking you questions. And I always say, practice, practice, practice your elevator speech. And when you're done, practice some more. You want that to roll off your tongue like your name and address, because it sounds natural. It comes clear. It doesn't sound choppy. It doesn't sound like you're struggling with it. It sounds very, very natural. You want it to be fluid. Now, when it comes to networking, we also think, well, we got to go to every event. We see, Chamber of Commerce is having an event. I got to go to that. I don't know. Small Business Associations I got to go to that. What happens? You go to a lot of these events, you're going to run into the same people 9 times out of 10. And you're going to be one of those guys or one of those gals that shows up to all these events. And people are going to know your story. So the point that I'm making is be selective. If you're looking to change jobs, then go to networking events where you have the best opportunity to find people in your field. Now, based on my experience, and I've been to many chamber meetings, and I've done all those things, okay? 80 to 90% of the people that show up to these events are either bankers, lawyers, accountants, or consultants. Why are they there? They're all looking for business. They really aren't interested in your career. They aren't interested in helping you. Now, you may get lucky every now and then, and somebody say, yeah, I happen to know somebody. Okay. The odds are small. Chances are everybody's there hustling for business, and you're looking for a job. But guess what? Your prospects of getting something there, very low. So be selective. If you're looking to change industries, then go to industry-specific events where you're going to find people in the industry you're looking to get into. And there, you're not really there to, you can try and sell yourself, but really what you're there is to gather intelligence, to learn more about the industry. And in the process, make contacts. People who can be helpful down the road. So be selective. Now, don't let the conversation always be about yourself. Our tendency is to say, wow, here's my chance. Hey, I'm Joe Cruz, and you're telling them all about yourself. But guess what? It doesn't always work that way. Particularly when you find somebody who is a senior person or a potential decision maker. The approach should be, hey, really impressed to meet you, or I'm pleased to meet you. Tell me about yourself. How'd you get to where you are? Tell me about your company. Let them do the talking. Nothing impresses someone more than talking about themselves. So if you want to impress somebody, make an impression, get them to open up and talk to you. And in the process, you're asking questions and you're getting information. And then you can say, hey, if I were looking to work for an organization like yours, what would you recommend I do? Now you're asking for their help. Not only have you been interested in what they had to say, now you're asking for their help. And guess what? They're going to feel a sense of obligation and say, yeah, well, you know what? Why don't you drop me a note? Or why don't we make an appointment? Call my secretary, make an appointment. Come and see me. It's happened. Trust me, it's happened. Be conversational. Don't make it sound like an interrogation, and don't make it sound like you're pounding this person with information. You're having a conversation, back and forth, back and forth. Engage. Be authentic. Be yourself. Don't try to be somebody you're not, or try to create an impression that isn't who you are. Be yourself, and be confident. At the end of the day, have fun. Networking events can be a drag. After a while, you've been to a number of them, you don't want to go anymore. You say, gosh, I don't want to go to that. Why? Because you're not having a good time. But if you're going to go, try and have fun while you're there. Try to find a moment where you can socialize and just have a laugh. That makes the next one a little more appealing. Always remember, changing jobs is a full-time endeavor, okay? Requires time, energy, and a lot of effort. I spent about 3 months between jobs once, I sent out 135 letters and resumes to companies all over across the country. I was living in California at the time. All over the country, I even sent them internationally. Okay, we didn't have the internet back then. I didn't have Word. Everything was just, I had every letter was a unique composition. And I sent them all out. And 135, I got 2 responses. 2 opportunities came out of that. One was a bank in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and another one was a bank that was headquartered in North Carolina, but had a big operation in Miami. And I interviewed with both. And I settled on Miami, even though the job in Albuquerque, New Mexico was a higher level job, paid a little bit more money, but it wasn't a fit for me. And again, I thought about what was most important to me at the time. And I learned that lesson. I learned that lesson because I left the bank. I was hired to work at a small community bank in Miami. Not this bank, this came later. This was a small community bank in Miami. I was actually approached by an executive recruiter. And she told me, look, there's a small bank in Miami. They've been taken over, the Office of the Controller of the Currency is they issued a memorandum of understanding. They put them under a consent order. They are basically restricted. They fired their management because they were just a lot of shenanigans. And they basically said, you got to bring in a whole new management team. So they had just hired a president, and they were looking for a chief lender, someone who basically run the entire lending operation for the bank. And they wanted me to join. Now, I worked for, at the time, was the largest bank in the world. I ran a division. We had over $1 billion in assets. I had responsibility for entire Southeast United States. And I was talking about a little community bank in Miami. I'd always thought about doing a turnaround. I thought, God, that would seem exciting, something interesting. I'd done what I was going to do with this bank. I didn't see much of a immediate opportunity. It was going through, we were hitting the financial crisis at the time. So the bank was going through enormous change internally. We're bringing new management from London, and it's crazy. So I thought this was an opportunity to do something different. So I went to this little bank, met with the board. They hired me. I joined the executive team. I remember our first executive committee meeting, we're strategizing. And the president says, do you think we can turn this bank around in 2 years? Me, no, yeah, sure, we could do this in 2 years. Well, when I dug into the problems that the bank had, I said, God, I may have spoken too soon. But sure enough, I was given carte blanche to hire a new team, rewrite the lending policies, and off we went. And thank the Lord, in 2 years, we came out of the consent decree. The bank was freed. The OCC said, you guys are doing everything you're supposed to be doing. We lifted the order. You can now become a regular bank again. And the bank was heading towards profitability. I felt really great. I said, gosh, look at that. I was part of that. Then I got a call from some former colleagues of mine. These guys, they were all former Fifth Third Bank guys. I knew them from another bank. But they had basically partnered with an investment group out of New York. And they'd raised $500 million, and they were shopping for banks in Florida, small banks that were failing or on the verge of failure. And they were buying them up, putting them together to create a bigger bank. The idea was to create this roll-up, eventually take it public, and everybody makes money. They offered me an opportunity to come in with them. I said, gosh, my chance. Boy, I'm going to make some money. I was used to, we were making $1.5 million real estate loans in this little community bank. I was used to making $50 million loans where I was before. This bank was writing checks for $25, $30 million. I said, well, this is what I'm used to. I like this. So I jumped. They were offering me more money. Now, I spent 16 years commuting from Broward County to Miami. I spent almost 4 hours a day commuting back and forth. Okay, and I did that for 16 years. This bank was headquartered 10 minutes from my house. I did not have to go on a highway. It was all local streets. I had 3 traffic lights, and that was it. I could go home for lunch, and I did often. Okay, so this was manna from heaven. I thought, man, this is great. I'm director of commercial banking. I'm making more money. I have an opportunity to get an equity play here. I'm close to home. Who could ask for more? 2 years. I was miserable. Culture was different. I had no visibility with the board, no visibility with the investor group, even though I come from a bank where I participated in all the board meetings. And after 2 years, I said, this isn't for me. I quit. Why? Because I realized that what was most important to me wasn't the money, wasn't the equity play. What was most important to me was the fact that I had respect, I had loyalty, I had people who appreciated what I was doing, and I was part of something very special with that little bank. That was important to me. It wasn't the money, and it wasn't the size of the loans. And I realized that too late. I made a bad decision because I didn't answer that basic question. I wasn't honest with myself. When you're looking for a job, you're always going to have more misses than hits. Like I said, 135 letters and resumes, 2 hits. 1 hit was a good one. But if done thoughtfully, effectively, and efficiently, the results will hopefully be exactly what you're looking for. There's one other point. Opportunities can come from any direction. You never know when you're going to run into an opportunity. And if you permit me, I'll tell you one more story. My very first job, I worked for Chase Manhattan Bank in New York City. I was working in the credit department. I was 21 years old. I was going to night school. Okay, I've been married not even a year. Had me a Friday afternoon. I had just come from lunch. It was a beautiful spring day. I was in a great mood. It was Friday, getting ready for the weekend. I happened to be walking by. There was a section of the department I was in that they had moved all the people out, so there was just a lot of empty desks. And I happened to be walking by, and the phone rang. There's nobody there. And I could have just kept walking. But something told me to answer the phone. So I answered the phone. Happened to be this really gregarious guy on the other line from Chicago. Hey, this is Tony. Blah, blah, blah. Hey, I'm trying to get some information on this company. It's a customer of Chase. Can you help me out? I said, gosh, it's Friday, I said, sure. What do you need? So I wrote it down, and he said, yeah, I really appreciate it if you could help me out. I said, okay. So I could have easily passed it off to somebody, but I said, let me take care of this myself. So I went. I called the branch where the customer was based. I got the information he needed. I called him back. And I say, hey, Tony, here's the information you needed. He says, Joe, I really appreciate that. You know what? If you ever need anything in Chicago, you give me a call. I said, sure. Now, I was a credit investigator at the time, which meant that I used to have to call banks to get credit information on their customers. Okay? So this was an exchange of information. So I started calling him. And every few weeks, I'd have a deal in Chicago. I'd have to call, and he'd help me out. If it wasn't his customer, he'd find who it was, and he'd refer me to them. And we did that for a couple of years. Then one day he calls me up and he says, Joe, I'm leaving my bank. I said, where are you going? He says, I'm moving to Los Angeles. I got a job with another bank in LA. I said, wow, man, I'm really sorry to hear you go. See that you're going. He says, well, don't worry. Our arrangement is still good. You have something in California, you call me, and I'll help you out. And I did. It took a few months. I didn't have anything in LA, but sure enough, eventually I did. I called him. True to the word. He helped me out. And we kept doing the same thing. And one day, it was 1976, I get a call. Hey, my name is Bob, and Tony works for me. And he told me if I come to New York, that I got to take you to lunch. And I said, well, great. I didn't even have a suit. I mean, the only suit I had was what you wear to disco, okay? And so I wore my suit, and I showed up. He took me to Francis Tavern. I don't know if you've ever heard of Francis Tavern. It's a historic restaurant. It's where George Washington said his farewell. And I'm sitting there. I had never read the Wall Street Journal in my life. I used to read the daily news. I always started at the sports page, went to the funnies, read my horoscope, and then eventually worked my way to the front. Okay, now, that day I decided to pick up the Wall Street Journal, and I'm reading it. And I'm reading the prime rate. What is the prime rate? What is that? That must be important, because it's right in the front. So I'm sitting there, I'm trying to make conversation with this gentleman. He's a VP with this big bank. And I'm making small talk, and I'm really nervous, but he's he just put me at ease. Really pleasant. And that was it. I thought, okay, great. He took me to lunch. I'll never see him again. Wrong. Following year, he came out again. But he brought Tony with him this time. So I got to meet Tony in person for the first time. And they took me to Windows on the World. Top floor of the World Trade Center, North Tower. And they said, hey, you ever think of moving to California? And I said, not really. I don't have anybody out there. I said, oh, well, you never know. Left that at that. Following year, Tony came out again. Took me out to dinner. We went to the Village. Great dinner. I thought, God, this is becoming a habit. Every year he comes out, he takes me out. I'm great. All of a sudden, I had transferred out of the credit department. I went to the international banking department. Again, I thought I was making a great move. Was I wrong? I worked for that mean, rude boss. She was tough, and she and I did not get along. And so I knew that my days were numbered. So one day, just before Christmas, I pick up the phone, and I call my friend Tony in Los Angeles. I said, hey, Tony, guess what? I'm just giving some thought. I'm thinking maybe out in the spring, I'm going to come out to LA and kind of get a lay of the land. I didn't even talk to my wife about it. That was a spur-of-the-moment thing. And he said, oh, you come out, you stay with me, and don't worry about it. I'll introduce you to everybody. I said, great. I went home, told my wife, I said, this is what I did. She said, what? Are you crazy? We just had a baby. My daughter was a year old. And she says, what, are you nuts? We don't know anybody in California. We don't even own a house. I said, well, I'm not sure I'm going to last at this bank any much longer. And she said, well, we'll see what happens. Sure enough, things worked out at the bank. I transferred to another area, great opportunity. I thought, okay, I'm fine. A month later, I get a call. It's Tony. Hey, you still coming out? And I said, well, things have changed, And he says, look, I want you to come out. I got an opportunity for you. I want you to come work for us. This threw out a number. He said, we'll pay for your relocation. Bring your dog, bring your car, bring everything with you. We'll put you up till you find a place. You have a job guaranteed. So, 75% bump in salary. And they put me on a trajectory. I made the decision. I talked to my wife. I said, this is life-changing. And I made the decision, and I went. And that changed the trajectory of my life. My career was nothing but up from that moment on. All because I answered a phone at an empty desk. So, point of the story, when opportunity knocks, answer the door. Be ready, be aware of when opportunity presents itself, because you never know how things are going to turn out. In my coaching practice, I wanted to come up with a phrase that I could use with everybody. And I put this on all of my marketing material. So I came up with this. Our achievements are limited only by the breadth of our dreams and the depth of our ambition. We can decide how far we want to go. We can decide where we want to end up. It's in our hands, for the most part. Okay? Life is a journey, and it has its challenges and obstacles. And like Cale Arnold said last meeting, there are struggles, and we're going to run into struggles. The key is, how do we deal with those struggles? How do we overcome those obstacles and those challenges? That's the true testament of your inner strength, your determination, and your character. It's in your hands. I told you before, I offered ideas and thoughts, not answers. The answers have to come from you. You have the answers inside of you. If you ask the right questions, you'll come up with the right answer. Thank you for listening.
Time for questions?
Absolutely.